You can do whatever you want to do and set your mind to. Why the hell would anyone ever order takeaway online? You just use the phone. We've got menus in our drawer. That's a stupid idea. Literally, that was my dad. But why the hell would you not do it?
How do some of the world's sharpest minds start their day? By putting their brain first. And it's not just our secret leaders who kick off every day with heights. From Stephen Fry to best-selling author and fellow podcaster Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who give us rave reviews. So if you care about your brain's health and cognitive potential, think heights. Listeners can get 25% off their first month with the code LEADERSHEIGHTS at www.yourheights.com.
Hello, I'm Dan Murray. I'm your host.
And I'm Rich Martell, your producer.
Welcome to Secret Leaders, the podcast all about awesome company builders, innovators and challengers who share the real behind-the-scenes stories about what it's like to create some of the biggest and most dynamic brands in the world. So hello and welcome to Series 2, Episode 1. Before we crack on with today's guest, we just have a few short announcements we're rather proud of. We just want to share with you quickly. First and foremost, we're delighted to be upskilling and upscaling for our second series. After receiving over 70,000 subscribers on a £250 spend on Series 1, we've taken Series 2 into a studio, built at the amazing Runway East, one of London's leading co-working operators dedicated to helping startups grow. So if you're looking for a hot desk office or indeed a studio like us, check them out.
We've not only tried to deliver on sound quality, but on guests. This series, you'll hear from the founders of the giant food chain, Café Rouge, the ultimate health innovator, Babylon Health, one of the most famous apps of all time with over 1 billion downloads in the form of Shazam, and many more household names who take you through their journey from startup to scale-up, and the challenges along the way. As always, delivered in an honest, open and authentic manner. Finally, a big thank you to our three sponsors, La Fosse, Calm.com and Contour Space, who helped us deliver this series.
On the subject of delivery, it's time for today's guest. So to get cracking, welcome back. And we hope you enjoy what we've got in store for you, because for the last 11 years, our guest has done nothing but think about takeaway. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, welcome to the wonderful and often tasty world of David Buttress, the co-founder and former CEO of food delivery giant Just Eat, who to this day remains part of the board. Now, described as one of the UK's standout entrepreneurs of the last decade, David got a taste for delivery-based businesses when he cultivated his own newspaper delivering service at the age of 11. However, unlike the paper round he built as a youngster, which was limited by how many houses one boy could deliver to, Just Eat exploded and David listed the company on the London Stock Exchange in 2014 with its current value just over £5 billion. He's recently left his full-time role and turned to the dark side, working with venture capital firm 83 North, investing into startups trying to discover the next big thing. So, enough from us and more onto the man himself. David, to break the ice, are you ready for a quick fire round?
I'm ready for quick fire.
Wonderful. Deliveroo or Uber Eats?
Oh, I go Deliveroo.
Do you actually use Deliveroo?
I use all, actually. I use Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat. I used Hungry House.
God, your marketing team would be so disgusted by your lack of brand loyalty.
Well, it's important to try your competitors, right?
Yeah, very fair. UK or US?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or Canary Islands, where you've just come back looking really brown from?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would have to go US, actually.
Okay. We can come on to that a little later. Now, I have immediately noticed the accent, so Cardiff or London?
Cardiff.
Okay, good lad. I guess that's rugby all the way then.
Simple, yeah.
Okay. YouTube or Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter.
Do you use Twitter a lot?
A lot.
Yeah, fair enough.
Twitter.
Google or Facebook?
Google.
Interesting. You're trapped on a desert island and you can bring 3 things. Not your wife, not your kids, not your tan.
I wouldn't take them anyway, but...
Okay. A rugby ball?
Yeah, I'd take a rugby. So 3 things, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd go rugby ball. I would go... I think I'd go Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. I like that book. And the probably 3rd thing I would go for would be some kind of sporting almanac to keep me... I love all sort of data around sports, so I'd have a good read of that.
Okay, fair enough. So the biggest book on sports we can possibly find you.
Yeah.
Angela's Ashes isn't even that long, though. You're going to get
through it. Yeah, but I enjoy
quite
it, right? I quite enjoy Frank McCourt's.
Yeah, fair enough.
And if you're on a desert island, you're not going to get off, so you might as well read something until someone rescues you. Otherwise, you're going to die anyway. So
that's very fair. But how many times are you going to be able to read that over and over again? I thought you were going to choose something like Lord of the Flies or something.
Something less profound. Actually.
Yeah. Okay. What are the apps you use most right now on your phone? What do you actually use?
Yeah, so I'm probably using the top 3. Twitter, I use a lot. I'm still using the food app, so Just Eat, obviously. I would be up there with the other food apps because I guess like lots of people cooking less. That's just a fact. And then the third thing I'd be using would be probably Trainline because I'm travelling a lot around the country at the minute, so I've started using that. It's a pretty good app, actually.
Yeah, it's a very good app. So on that note, you book your own travel. Yeah, you haven't got out of the habit of now having a PA to book travel.
No, I haven't got a fleet of people looking after me.
Okay.
I think I've got I stay pretty grounded.
Fair enough. Okay. Chinese or Indian food? It's obviously a very important question that people need to know. It's Indian, isn't it?
Indian, absolutely.
Most inspirational person in the world to you?
That's a great question. I think actually I would have to go with someone who I know, which would be my granddad, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go with him. He worked till he was 93 and was a very hard-working guy. Started work when he was 12. Kind of brought me and my brothers up from the age of about 11, 12. So he was an important figure. So I would have to go with him. Great.
That's a great answer. Is there an entrepreneur that you look up to?
Yeah, there's a few. I think probably when I first started getting interested in business, I really liked, obviously not alive now, but I liked Henry Ford and how he sort of invented, obviously, and how he step changed technology around transportation, how he thought about building an operation and how he thought about the world he operated in. He's a really interesting guy. I read a biography about him. He was a really interesting guy. So I really liked him. I guess from the technology world, more recent times, I guess all the usual names really, but I guess the one I sort of thought was probably the most brilliant at what they did was the Google guys. I think the 2 Google guys, probably the 2, if I look at it and think, wow, that was incredible how they, what they scaled and how they did it. So over Jobs or anyone like that.
Right, so person that you least like on the planet, is there someone that fits that bill?
Wow, least like. Yeah, okay. Least like, but greatly respect. How about this one? So, probably the England rugby coach, the Aussie guy.
Oh, interesting.
Eric Jones.
Eddie Jones.
Eddie Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So least like him because he's actually bloody good as a rugby coach, and as a Welsh rugby fan, that's not good.
Yeah.
But I definitely respect him. I got invited to this dinner thing, and Eddie Jones was there. And when they sort of lay out all the tables, he happened to be on my table, and I thought, oh no, bloody Eddie Jones! I can't sit next to Eddie Jones for 3 hours, and be listening to, because England had just won the Grand Slam as well. I was like, I can't. This is just my night of hell. And it just goes to show what a great guy he is, because I couldn't help but really, really like him. And the more I liked him, the more I respected him, the more I was getting frustrated about it, because he's a brilliant guy. And I'm not surprised if you saw him speak. The way he talks and how he engages with people, he's very real. And I noticed he did little things that just, I think, are always impressive. Like, for example, there was a couple of the professional rugby players from Wales and Scotland on neighbouring tables, and he went and shook hands with the captains of all the different teams. No other coach did that. The Welsh coach was there. There was some other, I think there's maybe the Irish coach. There were some other coaches there. But only Eddie Jones did that before he left. He made a point of going up to them. Just shows respect, right? They're captain of international countries, and he showed them some respect. And you could see the players, they just liked him and they warmed to him, and he has that quality about him. And I think he's dead right about culture on the wall, because one of the things we said at Just Eat was, if we ever put posters on the wall about our culture, we will know that's the day this company has completely lost the plot around culture. Because actually the culture of any company is quite simple. It's how they look at how the leadership behaves. That's the culture. Everything else is just bullshit in my mind. So that's at least how we thought about it.
It's amazing, actually, the fact that he did that with Australia, because he was the coach of Australia when England won the. I say we, sorry.
Yeah,
when England won the World Cup, and then with Japan, that match in the World Cup over here, where they beat South Africa.
Yeah,
he's got a great track record.
Yeah.
Okay, so
he was a teacher, right? I think he was a teacher.
Was he a teacher before?
I think he was a teacher before.
And that's how he got into coaching, because he was doing rugby coaching.
I think he was a teacher, which
That's
says something
amazing,
about being a
isn't
good
it?
coach, right?
Rich is going to Google
I
this
can't Google
whilst
it
we
because
crack
we're
on.
in a
You gotta
cage.
Oh yeah, it's true. Even the internet doesn't work whilst this happens. Okay, I mean, if anyone's going to call for you, you're completely screwed. You're just going to have to trust us.
Yeah.
I was actually, on the weekend, I was with someone whose job is to help people craft stories. And she was explaining to me that the best place to start a story sometimes is right bam smack in the middle. So let's drop listeners right into it.
What stands out as the most manic day from your time at Just Eat, and why? What happened? Take us through an audio treat of intensity to, wake our readers up, our listeners. Hopefully you're not reading the transcripts of this podcast, otherwise you're wasting your time. But
I'm taking a deep breath thinking about it. I've probably got 3 or 4 I could recount, but probably one of the biggest ones for me was Valentine's Day 2011, because our entire back-end systems went down. So we lost everything. So in other words, when we had at the time probably 11, 12,000 restaurants in the UK alone, and we just couldn't communicate with them. And at the time we were probably processing around 100,000 or plus orders a day. So maybe 200,000 consumer orders in the UK a day at the time. And we lost all means of automatic communication with our restaurants, which is not good when you have a system that's dependent on real-time communication, etc. I won't bore you with that. So it was horrendous. So we all just jumped on a massive group Skype call, tried to figure out literally while the plane was in flight and the engines were failing, or had failed in effect, literally trying to fix it as we were flying. We could see the orders piling up, backlogging up. It was just the most horrendous feeling. So I think we worked for, I think that was 60 hours. Anyway, we worked for it was 2 and 2, it felt like weeks, but probably 2.5 days solid to rebuild, get it stable, get it back up. I had to replace boxes in restaurants. I won't even bore you. We had like a fleet of my mum going out. There was literally just like everyone that you knew, that you remotely trusted.
So you were taking orders, but you weren't able to get those through to the restaurant?
Yeah, so we were phoning them through, which is not a good idea, right? When you have an automated,
very
scalable business model. So
and time sensitive, I guess.
And huge, got 45 minutes before people start twitching at the curtains and getting agitated. So yeah, that was probably a pretty intense, more than 24. That was probably 48, 60 hours. And then IPO in the company was just a surreal experience, because you're sort of doing, I guess, 15, 16-hour days, and then back-to-back, US, London, and then you have the meeting in the evening around allocation of your shares, and then your IPO at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's just like a stag do without alcohol, I would describe it as.
But was there some alcohol afterwards?
There was probably alcohol during, but not that much, because it's mostly with bankers.
As in they probably wanted to lay it on, but you didn't necessarily.
Yeah, maybe. And then on the day of the IPO, we did the thing at the London Stock Exchange at 8 in the morning. And then we did actually, after about 11 o'clock, we did go and have a few drinks, actually. Yeah, we did. So yeah, that was a good day.
One more thing before we go back to the start. Just wanted to know, you mentioned Eddie Jones as, and obviously pointed out, something he said around culture. But, what is something incredibly motivational that's been said to you in the past that, really stuck with you? Is it maybe some advice from your grandpa? Is it another leader? Is it a colleague?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So there is one, actually, and I say it to my kids now. So it's a very simple phrase, but it's a little bit like Henry Ford has used something similar on this. But basically, you can do whatever you want to do and set your mind to. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you actually really think about the words and think how empowering they are, and also how true they are if you really believe them, then actually it's an incredibly useful phrase. And so I had that drummed into me from an early teens that, listen, you're in a council estate, a single parent family in South Wales in the 80s, post-miners' strike. It was grim. But have someone say to you, you can do whatever you want to do with your life. It felt pretty powerful to me at the time, and it became a bit of an anchor in my mind. And certainly when I was when we were starting Just Eat in the UK in 2005, early 2006, I went to dinner actually with my family, and it was interesting. There were 10 people around the table, and about 3 or 4 of them said, why the hell would anyone ever order takeaway online? You just use the phone. We've got menus in our drawer. That's a stupid idea. Literally, that was my dad. Thanks, Dad. Inspirational. So
that wasn't the most motivational.
That wasn't the most, but actually, interestingly, going back to that point about my grandfather, he was always that one person who would say, and at the time he was probably like, I don't know, late 70s or I don't know, whatever. No, probably in his 80s, early 80s. And he just said, listen, go for it. Why the hell would you not do it? And that sort of going back to, you can do whatever you want to do. Well, of course you can do it. You're 28, 29, but go for it. And if I think people have that perspective on the world, it's very liberating. And I see it with children now, even the education system. We're far too quick to discourage entrepreneurs, and we're far too quick to discourage free thinking, or for people who want to change something that seems at the time maybe inconceivable to change. And as a society, we do that a lot. Actually, we do it, I think, subconsciously, even in the education system. So the more we lift the lid off that stuff, the better we'll be.
I mean, I totally agree about the education side, right? As someone who is just incredibly poor at things like maths and science, being made to do it all the time only ruins your confidence.
Of course.
It only just makes you feel like you're not good enough to, you're not a fully formed human being because you can't do certain things. Whereas actually that's the case for everyone. Everyone can be good at everything. On that note, again, I guess, you were surrounded by someone who was a multiplier. So someone who was in your ear, able to tell you that you can 10x yourself.
Yep.
And it's a shame that people don't necessarily have that, but hopefully...
Everyone needs one, I guess.
Yeah.
We all need one as kids.
Absolutely, but that's the point of things like podcasts, like YouTube, like anything really that can help people understand that actually the power's within them to make that change. I guess with regards to you being anything you wanted to be, so it turns out you always wanted to do something around delivery. Take us through. Are you just an incredibly good cyclist?
Yeah,
is that how it started on the newspaper round?
I think I'm bloody hard working, actually, which is a good ingredient to want to start any sort of, I guess business, but sort of delivery, operational business. You've kind of got to have a bit of a hard working ethos because they're tough, right? Especially in the early years when they're subscale, and they're quite gritty. If you think about walking into takeaways, at the time in the mid-2000s, that wasn't the most sexy technology company to start up. In fact, for many years, VCs had a little bit of a look down their nose at Just Eat because they thought, well, you just grotty little takeaways. They're not even Michelin star restaurants in Mayfair. So that was kind of sort of something we had to break. So I guess I'm definitely someone who's got that hard work and ethos, which I think all good entrepreneurs have in their DNA, because you kind of need to be willing to do and work hard. I think the other thing I would say about it, I really loved the relationship side of we're talking to restaurant owners, small business owners, I guess you'd call them. I loved that bit of it. That was great because there's some amazing entrepreneurs that run restaurants. Your local Indian, your local Chinese, trust me, there's some really good business people and they're very shrewd, really good operators. So I quickly became to really enjoy their company and respect them. So that was something that I got back quite early. So even though it was hard work and quite gritty, crossing doors, all that grim stuff, if you like, the great stuff was the people beyond the doors were really interesting people that, many of them actually I'm friends now. In fact, I've converted 2 Iranians into Welsh rugby supporters who come to games with me. So Farid, who a couple of guys who own Pizza Go-Go, which is a London-based sort of pizza chain, though I've managed to convert them just through a friendship that I've developed with them over the years.
It's amazing. One of the more meaningful exchanges in your life.
Yes, exactly.
I guess just coming back to where we are right now, which essentially is in a basement in a bunker, does this remind you a little bit of your first office at Just Eat? That was a basement, wasn't it? I know this is probably going to say a lot nicer.
It was probably a little bit, I have to say, I don't know, show off, but probably a little bit bigger than this.
Yeah?
Don't say my bunker was bigger than your bunker.
We are in probably a 3 metre by 3 metre room.
I'm not saying mine was bigger than yours, but I think it was.
Typical Welsh response to an English person. That is unbelievable. Okay, so take us back to the start. I mean, the story does start in a basement. So who was there? Who was there with you? And how did that first year pan out for you?
Yeah, well, it was me and a brilliant guy, actually, the sort of brains of the outfit, if you like, a guy called Jesper Buch, who was a
great name.
Yeah, he's a Danish guy. He was a brilliant entrepreneur. He actually does he does Dragon's Den in Denmark now, on that huge TV audience that he gets. But he does Dragon's Den in Denmark. Does a lot of investing.
Dragon's Den.
Yeah, Oh, that was good.
That's getting ahead of
That's good. I'm going to steal that and text him that.
That's harsh.
I'm going to text him that. So he does a lot of investing now and has done since probably 2012, 2013. And so it was me and him, and he was kind of doing the product and the sort of back end customer service stuff, and I was doing the sort of front of house. Then also doing all the restaurant side of the acquisition side of it there, as well as obviously all the digital customer acquisition strategy. So, yeah, so it was him and I. So we literally just did everything basically, whether it be open the bank account, put the desk together. And the first day was, I can remember it well actually, because I don't know why, but it was March the 1st, 2006, and it was a very surreal day. I was really excited, actually. I was really buzzing about it. Turned up in a suit. Who does that? Embarrassing as that.
You're the first one to turn up in a suit for the podcast.
Really?
So
there you go. Look at that.
Who does it is you.
There you go. So yeah, I do it. There you go. So I did. Yeah, I sort of turned up in a suit. And the first thing Jesper said was, you can take the tie off. I was like, yeah, that's a bit embarrassing. I felt like I was going to my mum's wedding or something. So I did that. And then after that, we just got on with it. We just cracked into the work. And then very quickly it went from being really exciting to actually being really hard work. And then I think after about the first 2 or 3 days, it felt real. Oh my God, I'd left, a job to do this.
What job did you leave?
I was at Coca-Cola, actually heading up the restaurant strategy for them in the UK and Ireland.
What was he doing?
He was he'd moved over from Denmark, and prior to that he was a barman in a Crazy Daisy nightclub chain in Denmark, and that was his first angel investor when he started Just Eat. We met in Nando's in Hammersmith in the summer of 2005 because a colleague in Denmark said there's this crazy entrepreneur, he's coming to London, who was running the restaurant business for Coca-Cola in Denmark, and he said, would you mind giving him 30 minutes of your time because he's interested in the restaurant category in the UK, and if you could just meet him, I'd really appreciate it as a favour. And I always thought, it was always good if you can to help people, so yeah, I made 30 minutes and ended up being 45 minutes and bought him some chicken. And it went from there. I think we ended up going to a pub.
Cheapest chicken you ever bought in the end?
Cheapest chicken, best chicken I ever bought, probably, yeah.
Exactly.
And then we ended up going to a pub. And then all the best ideas obviously start and finish in pubs, right? So
very true.
So I remember going home that night saying, I want to start this business called Just Eat.
And his idea was it, or did it just?
It was his idea.
Oh,
so
really?
he had the idea. He was the driving in the idea. I mean, Jesper was up in the Danish embassy in Oslo. He was working in the Danish embassy when he first got the idea, and he went to Google and just looked to order a pizza, I think, or something online, and he just couldn't find anything. So he, as he was telling me in Nando, he said, it's just nuts. Couldn't do it. He said, try and do the same now. And of course I couldn't. I was like, oh my God, that is nuts. And I remember saying to him, look, if we don't do this, somebody will. Somebody is definitely going to do this. So why not it be us? So that was it.
And so how did you finance that first year?
We bootstrapped. We were a bit stupid, to be honest. We bootstrapped for too long. We bootstrapped for 2 years and a bit. And the reason why I say that is I still think to this day Just Eat would be probably 12 months further along, maybe, than we are now, because I guess both of our backgrounds, Jesper came from a very humble background, so we were paranoid about money and running out of money and not having money and going bankrupt and all this sort of boring stuff.
Did either of you have families at the time?
Neither of us had families. Both of us had partners. That's right, yeah. So so not really, but I think we just felt almost just worried about running out of money. So we were sort of bootstrapping everything. So the first month we turned over £36. So we had 18 quid between the two of us, which we spent in all bar one in Canary Wharf. Because what else do you do with 36 quid?
Yeah.
There's no point taking that home and saying, look what I've made this month.
And in case you're wondering, David's not so old that £36 was different back then.
Yeah, thanks, exactly. And then the second month was 250, and then the third month it was 1,000, the fourth month was 2,000. And so we sort of followed this really naive model of when we got to maybe month 6 and it was like £8,000 of net revenues for us, we then started adding one person. And we got really excited. Oh, we've added one more person because we've made £2,000 extra this month, so we can hire someone. And we did that. It was kind of noble and quite kind of cute in a way, but it was actually really naive because what we actually had was a proven business model that was scaling. And what we should have done, of course, is raise money and gone much quicker and accelerated faster. Anyway, long story short is we ended up raising from Index in 2009, so it turned out okay. But
so you skipped out any angels, full stop.
Yeah, we bootstrapped. There was a Danish angel that Jesper brought in that he knew from his network in Denmark. But the first real, I would say, significant major sort of institutional funding round was Index in our Series A. But yeah, there was an angel, but it was a sort of Danish contact of Jesper's.
How easy was the sell at the beginning to restaurants? Was the proposition different, or was it exactly the same as it is now? And were people, was it easy to get into places?
So the first day I actually got thrown out because I went out in that bloody suit and they thought I was a tax man. So I went to Speedo Pizza on Commercial Road in Docklands, and the guy threw me out. He said he didn't believe who I said I was. He said, "You're not a salesman. You're from the Inland Revenue." And he threw me out. Now I don't know what that says. I don't know what that says about him rather than me. But there we go. Yeah. So I did actually get thrown out in my first restaurant. So I thought this is going to be tricky. But then the second day, wore jeans and a polo shirt, and strangely, people did start talking to me a bit easier. Slightly more mirrored, I guess. But yeah, no. So it was tough. I had a sales ratio which I managed to work out after probably about 50 calls, which was 12, 6 and 1. So I do 12 visits to a restaurant, do 6 presentations, and 1 restaurant would sign. So the thing I said to myself was, I'm not going home until I've signed 1. And I knew to get there by about day 10, I knew that 12 visits, 6 presentations would lead to 1 sale. And then the subsequent restaurants would follow over the next 90 days. So those 6 presentations, another 2 to 3 of those restaurants would sign up in the subsequent 60 days after. So I sort of bottomed that out quite quickly from my Coke background. It was very useful actually to understand sales ratios.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, Coca-Cola. Yeah, not that. not the narcotic.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Not
that's
the
a
narcotic.
good sales background as well. And
It
a 12,
would be.
6 and
It
1
would
ratio.
be. Yeah, no, it was a little bit more boring than that. So that was it, and I just cracked through it then. And
Did you focus on a particular area, or was it
Canary Wharf?
It was
So our bunker was in Canary Wharf and Marsh Wall, and we sort of didn't go far from there for the first probably 60, 90 days.
Do you remember what your first pitch was to investors or to Index? Like, what was that like? What were you really saying? And if you hadn't done the whole angel route and all that stuff, were you just how that all feel? Was it terrifying? Were you really confident?
No, we didn't have a bloody clue. We'd never seen a VC in our life. I didn't even know what a VC was until we sort of started speaking to them probably in 2008. You know, Jesper was and I were very naive. But in a way, that was a good thing. Naivety can be a good thing, right? Because we sort of went in there believing passionately in what we were doing, felt we had a real mission, felt that we were really helping these small businesses, felt that there was a global business to scale, didn't see any reason why it couldn't be us. So by then, I think we sort of had this sort of passionate conviction about the product and what we were trying to build and the company. We knew what our culture was because it was us, and we really felt that we sort of started to be able to replicate that with good hiring. Hiring on culture rather than maybe experience or skills. We hired on culture, and if we thought they were a good fit for our company. So we had some strong, I think, attributes going into a VC funding process, if you like. And then we really liked Danny Reimer at Index, and we really sort of culturally really liked Danny. And then we met Ben Holmes, and we really liked Ben. So there was sort of the culture felt good. And to be fair to Danny in particular, he really saw, like a lot of VCs, I think we got thrown out of, I got told no by at least 50 VCs.
It was the suit, wasn't it?
It was the suit again. It was that.
Well, this time it was the polo shirt.
It was the polo shirt. Yeah, no, it was the pizza stains. So I think we went to 120 presentations. We did a lot of VC work. It was really unproductive and painful. But to be fair to them, they saw, and the big reason why we got thrown out was the reason I gave you, actually. People said, is this scalable? Local takeaway restaurants, really? Because I think people bring their personal bias to funding process, even sophisticated VCs. And it's the biggest mistake I see, actually, in the venture world, is they bring that personal bias to when they're trying to judge objectively someone's business.
I was in a VC meeting recently, and they were talking about shopping in the consumer space, and they were telling me all these opinions of how people use their phone, how they shop, etc., etc. And I was like, I'm really sorry to stop you there, but what you've just said is true for men. And the majority of our audience are female, and actually if you ask women, they'll tell you the exact opposite. And he was like, oh, that's a fairly good point. I was like, astounded.
Yeah.
Like, how could you not realise you're just giving a really obvious male bias to how a man shops on a product?
And these are sophisticated, bright people, right?
Yeah, very, very sophisticated.
So we had a lot of that. And so we had a lot of, look, takeaway, don't really get this, local takeaways, doesn't feel like a big business, doesn't feel like it can scale. Do people really buy that much at local takeaways? Because, of course, if you live in Chelsea and Fulham, and you have a different view of the world, I guess. So, but luckily, the Index guys and Danny in particular saw through that, were big advocates of us, and they could see we were very operationally driven, and their money really helped us to scale. But I just wish we did it a year earlier.
Being on the other side of the table now, is this something you purposefully have to make sure you don't do, is go in with a bias?
Yeah, I do, and I actually tell colleagues all the time, and I just think it's the most. I just think I get really frustrated with it. I did as a CEO, if you have to leave your personal biases at the door, right, and judge things on their merits and on individuals you're speaking to and what they're presenting to you. What you might feel is irrelevant, right? It's completely irrelevant. It's like me not liking Eddie Jones. I can still respect him because he's bloody brilliant at what he does, and look at the results. Look what he's building. That's how I judge it, and therefore, would you invest and back him 100% every day of the week? You should. Doesn't mean to say, but what you must do is leave that bias at the door. And actually, I see a lot, even today, even in the world, people watch TED Talks and learn all the time about personal bias. People still bring it to the party all the time, and it's very, very restrictive and wrong and stupid.
So your first VC round with Index, how much did you raise? And actually, can you even remember how much you've raised through various rounds until you hit your IPO?
Yeah, so we raised 7 million with Index in our Series A, and then in our Series B, we raised 15, of which that was in 2011. That was with Greylock and Redpoint in the West Coast. And then we did a Series C, which was completely unnecessary with private equity. And I say unnecessary because we never used the capital because the company became profitable. So we raised a 35 million with Vitruvian, a private equity company, in our Series C in late 2012, on the autumn of 2012. But that, like I say, we never used that money. In effect, it just
What
sat in the
happens
bank.
in that circumstance if you don't use the money?
Sits in your bank, and they got a bloody great deal. So that they basically invested. Yeah, we diluted ourselves unnecessarily as entrepreneurs, and they were good. They were good round the board. To be fair to them, they were good round the board, but we never needed the capital. So it was I guess, a naive round in that sense.
Were you profitable when you took the money?
No, we were fast approaching it, but it probably goes back again to our approach. You know, if you go back to us, we were too conservative, and we were a little bit cautious, and we were always a little bit. So I think, for us, we're probably not the best template to follow from how to raise money, because we did it too late in our Series A. Then we raised unnecessary money in our Series C. But I guess you learn as you go. So I would say...
But having said that, it's a fine line, and being overly sensitive and overly cautious is much better than being wrong.
It is.
And arrogant
and that's
about
true.
making your targets, which very rarely people do. That just shows good leadership.
Yeah, maybe.
How many employees did you actually have when you left Just Eat, just out of interest?
2,130.
So with 2,130 employees from two guys in a basement, you have a big effort on scaling culture.
Yeah.
And I've seen you do a talk before where you talked about your annual events, those big Just Eat annual events where you bring people around the world. Do you want to share some of that with our listeners and explain how you viewed culture and scaling culture over that time?
Yeah, I like to think I think all good leaders are militant about things they really think matter for their company. And one of the things we were militant about was our culture. And so one of the things we did every year, we called it the World Party. And this, the reason why I say that sort of world thing with a sense of irony is the first time we did it was in Regent's Park in 2006. There were 8 of us with a picnic from M&S. It wasn't really a world party, but it probably tells you something about our ambition, because we even called that the World Party. There's like 2 colleagues from Denmark and 6 from the UK in a park in North London. So, and that was the World Party. And then so it stayed called the World Party.
M&S, though, that explains where your £36 went.
Yeah, look at that, M&S.
Yeah, exactly.
That's proper sausage rolls. So so then we did that every year. So it then evolved into Centre Parks, which then evolved into an entire hotel in Windsor, and we flew every employee from around the world. And by the end, we had employees in Australia, Brazil, Canada, Mexico, obviously most of Western Europe, and so we would fly them all in. 2 days. First day would be sort of a professional agenda. We would do like a conferencey style thing, but it was kind of fun and energy all together. We had the biggest indoor marquee in the UK in my last year as CEO. It went to Glastonbury and came from Glastonbury to Just Eat. That's brilliant. That's proper.
Why do you need an indoor marquee?
Because just in case it rains. And
Indoors?
Because we could.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Because we could. That's a better answer.
And then the second day was sort of cultural. So we would do like interactive team stuff together, have the big party in the evening, have a concert, spend time together, have some drinks, have a barbecue, and what was one of my favourite bits of it was from every country we operated in, there was like a wigwam, and everyone had the food from their local country. So you had Brazilian food in the Brazilian tent,
cool.
etc., etc. And you got to eat food from all the different teams, and the local teams, the Just Eat teams, would have to make the food and then serve it, and it was just a brilliant thing. It was just a great thing, and I think that was kind of the cherry on the cake of our culture. But I think the most important thing we did was that we created a very flat organisation in terms of, there wasn't a big string hierarchy. Going back to your point about Eric and the guy sat in his office, I shared an office, anyone could be in my office. I didn't care. I didn't get precious about stuff like that. And I think being open with your employees, we shared information widely, even as a public company. We didn't get too neurotic about that to the point that our board would always be like, oh my God, have we really told everybody that? Because we're like, well, actually, they matter more. They matter a lot. There are people who work for us. They're our colleagues. So if I can't trust them, who can't I trust something? So I think those sort of things on our culture, I think we got very right. And actually, that's my biggest, when I was leaving a year ago, when I left the CEO role, the biggest thing I sort of said, and I really think about today, is I really hope as the company goes on its journey now, that it keeps the best of the culture. Of course, all companies evolve. I just hope it keeps that culture, because that's probably as a sort of an entrepreneur, that's the thing I think was, if I said what's the biggest, most important thing we got right, that was the thing we got right. And it's very easy not to value it. But once it's gone, you've lost it forever.
Totally agree. One of our generous sponsors enabling us to put together season 2 is a company called Contour, which is contour.space, which is a newer player in the office space game, really. Helps startups from a team of 2 people in a basement all the way up to 2,000 people in a skyscraper building. I guess what I want to know is when they weren't around and other players like them weren't around, how did you manage scaling from 2 people to, what did you say, 2,000?
100 and something.
Yeah, I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, no, the logistics of it are tough. So we had very lucky. We had a great CFO, a guy called Mike Rowe, and Mike was absolutely brilliant. He come from running an airport. I think he's done a job, like he worked for BAA or something like that, and he'd run Heathrow Airport at one point in his career before we joined Just Eat. And it just was brilliant because he just knew how to, run the office environment, scaling it, logistics around that stuff. Mike was just great. So I used to let Mike tell Mike what we wanted, and then Mike would just crack on with it.
I guess 2,000 people is nothing if you've tried to operate in Heathrow, so fair enough.
How would you describe your leadership style? And has it changed through the years? Has it had to?
Yeah, it definitely has to change. I think when I started, I was extremely hands-on in the business from an operational perspective and very much in every detail. And I think that's important, actually, and certainly through Series A and then into Series B, and obviously as a startup, it was a necessity. It wasn't a strategic decision. I just had to. So I think you do have to be able to, as a leader, how I changed was understanding that in order for this thing to scale, you cannot be a top-down leader, sat in London, certainly with our business model, which is a local business in every market we operated in. You need to empower people and understand that actually it's them that need to be the entrepreneurs in the market that they operate in within your organization. And you can only create that really by trust, sharing information, yes, calibrating and checking in on how they're doing against, agreed measures or whatever, but really empowering them to run their countries. And if you went to Just Eat Spain, for example, I always prided it on the fact that when I went there, it felt like Just Eat in the UK did in 2008 and 9, which what that told me was we really trusted them with the model, if you like, or our company, and they built it, and it was all credit to them. It was nothing to do with us sat in London. All we did was hopefully get some hiring right around the cultural hiring for our Spanish team. But it very much felt like, a startup, even though it was basically well-funded from a very well-funded company.
Did they get siestas?
I think, no, they didn't actually. I don't know if that's changed a little bit in Spain now, though.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't think our Spanish team ever really did that. I was quite surprised by it. The Italian team were a little bit more sort of classic Italian culture, but the Spanish team were very sort of Western European, unfortunately. Maybe that's a bad thing, I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. You just mentioned, you just touched on this yourself, actually, but talk to us about hiring. How do you find those kind of people? Do you think this is something that you've always had a great skill at? Is that one of your core strengths, finding those types of people, or did you devolve that to someone else? Was that someone else's strength from the early days?
No, I think I was good at surrounding myself with people, I think, that had complementary skills. I think I understood well that in order to build an organization and scale it, you need very different people than yourself. So hiring lots of people, again, bringing personal bias to the table and hiring people that you like to spend time with is not, I think, a good global scalable business leader model. I think you need to bring people that actually you understand. So I think I had a good instinct at Just Eat of what we needed next. For example, Mike Rowe, our CFO, run an airport, knew that we were going to have to build global offices, knew we have to build global logistics. So having Mike hired and brought in, that was probably a good example of understanding what was required. I think and that was credit actually to some other guys as well. And then I think the other thing I got right was also understanding that when it was time to move people on, because it does come a time when you have to do that. And I think I had a good feel for actually, we need something different now. The business has got to a point where it's outgrown an individual. They're the tough conversations as well, but you've got to be willing to have them. I never enjoyed doing them, but, there were times when I had to do that. And I think being able to do that, though, is an important facet of enabling your company to then grow again and keep pushing forward.
And what about competition? I mean, you haven't been the only people in the space, but you've obviously beat off a lot of the competition along the way, and
I guess the way to describe it is eating them up.
Yeah.
So how do you view competition? How did you look at it from the start? Did you spend a lot of time analysing your competitors, or did you just put your head down and crack on?
I think, I don't want to make this sound like a contradiction, but I was always massively competitive, even as a child. So I definitely wanted, when we started building Just Eat, I wanted us to be the biggest, most successful, beat our competitors, all those sort of I guess kind of bit cliched sort of business terms you could apply to most things in life. But I definitely wanted to win, whatever that meant. I didn't want to be an also-ran player. I wanted to absolutely slam all our competitors and be the best player we could be and biggest player we could be. But at the same time, actually, this does sound like a contradiction there. At the same time, I definitely had a healthy respect because I could see that there were companies I looked at within our space. I thought, wow, they're doing a good job because we were in the first mover, right? We were the third mover in the UK. So lastminute.com started, had Urban Byte, which Last Minute at the time was quite a big company in the UK in the .com era. So they had Urban Byte, which started before us. And then Hungry House started about 6 or 8 weeks before us and went on Dragon's Den. Some people might remember.
Yeah, I remember.
So we weren't the first mover. I think what we were, though, was the best executed to scale. And that was partly driven by this culture, I think, of wanting to win and be the biggest, but also, I think, driven by the fact we were operationally the best company in the sector.
Can you give us some insight about the journey? I mean, obviously, you hear about Just Eat Now, and it was the first tech company in the UK to IPO. Is there some kind of chat about that?
There was
Might be on a technicality.
I don't know. Yeah, we were definitely the biggest tech IPO in the UK for a decade or so, I think. Yeah, I think that's true.
So, I mean, people hear that story and then they're just like, well, there's that, rocket ship from start to straight line or hockey stick even upwards, but obviously it's not quite the facts. So what are some of the toughest blips along the way that you can share with us?
Yeah, no, I think I always laugh when I hear that because we kept getting called a startup into like the Daily Mail, and it used to just make me want to pull my last of my hair out because like it's so disrespectful journalism because like we'd spent over 10 years of our life, blood, sweat and tears building it, nearly gone bust twice and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, oh, this overnight success, it's like, yeah, okay, thanks for that, brilliant.
What just actually then let's focus on that. What does almost go bust mean to you? Describe those moments.
I remember it well. It was August 2006 and Jesper had some problems and wanted to go back to Denmark, and we were running on fumes basically financially. And then luckily this angel I mentioned came through for us and helped us out. But we were literally, Jesper said, let's close up. He actually said, let's just pack it in. The next day he came back in and said, no, we're not going to pack it in. We're going to conquer the world again. But, there was definitely 24 hours where I went home and thought, oh, Jesper's really in a bad place here. So there was that, and people often forget that. There was actually the first month. I remember going home to my partner and saying, who's now my wife, and saying, we just, our turnover's £36 and that's, by the way, that's between two of us. It was a bit of a reality. I didn't feel good about it. I thought, oh my God, I think I'd just taken on a small mortgage, and it was like, oh my God, that's quite terrifying. What have I done? Perhaps my dad was right and I'm a moron. So there was moments like that, and then of course the technology challenges we had around scale were just horrendous. So we numerous times hit platform issues around scale. But that's again where Index actually came in helpful because what they did, they actually, part of their funding, they introduced a really good CTO, and he helped us to build a stable platform to then go on and scale, which was probably one of the most liberating. Carlos Magado, one of the most liberating things that happened to us because Carlos really put a stable platform in place. I used to talk about the 3 S's: stability, security. He's going to kill me. Stability, security.
Spanish.
No, what was it? Stability, security. I can't remember anyway. Okay. So it's Carlos left to write in with the third S, but there was he used to keep back in 2008 and 9. He kept saying about these 3 S's, and
takeaway.
Yes, maybe it was that. So yeah, and that really helped us to scale our organisation because we, in the end, we ended up working with 70,000 restaurants around the world. So we definitely needed stability.
You IPO'd for £1.5 billion, correct?
Something like that.
Price on the London Stock Exchange. Is that the best moment of your life?
Definitely not.
Interesting.
Definitely not. No, I was quite.
It's an emphatic no, though.
Definitely not. Yeah, I don't know. I felt. I don't know. It was a nice moment, but I think more exciting for us, honestly, was a Series A. I know that sounds odd, but just because we'd been bootstrapped for so long, and to get validation from an external person who's willing to give us money, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We're not idiots.
Big Series A as well for London.
It was for us at the time, right? It was a huge deal, and we really felt we were going to conquer the world with all that. We thought this is, £6 or £7 million to us was like, we were like, oh my God, we can buy the world with £6 or £7 million.
What was your plan? Just going back to that, what was your plan with the £6 or £7 million? Was it to grow the UK?
So expand internationally, Western Europe. I can remember the deck. So expand into Western Europe to go on trial a national television advertising campaign for the first time, and to scale our sales organisation to every corner of the UK. That was the 3 pillars of our funding round. I remember it well. And so that was the IPO for me was a little bit of a. It was great for the company. It was great for our shareholders. It was nice for my mum. But honestly, I had kind of a reverence to it. I was a bit, I probably bored of spending time with bankers, and I thought, this is not what I didn't know what an IPO was when I started Just Eat. I'm happy to admit it. I had no idea. If someone said IPO, I'd have gone, I don't know, what is that? Is that some international NGO or something? I didn't know. So for me, an IPO was great for the company, was great for our shareholders, but I just wanted to keep the company with the same two things, which is have the same culture and have the same level of global ambition. Because I see, it's good now, actually. I see a lot of UK companies with global ambition, but we were probably the first to be really genuinely. I mean, Rightmove were before us, and they never really left the UK, I don't think. So, we were really globally ambitious, and we wanted to keep our culture. And it was those two things when we IPO'd were in the top of my mind. I remember the morning of the IPO thinking, I just want to make sure this culture doesn't change and our ambition levels don't change, and we don't start just managing investors for profits.
And what did it feel like running a public company after that?
It was good. I never changed. I mean, if you ask our shareholders and more importantly, if you asked our internal team if I changed, I think they would tell you unequivocally no. I think I was the same person when we were a private company, and I was the same person when we were a public company. So I think I had a healthy irreverence to it. Although I did actually have to confess, I really enjoyed the road shows. And I heard a lot of CEOs complain to me about how much time they'd spend on road shows doing events. That was good. I really enjoyed it. It was only like, there's a London-listed company, you only do 2 a year anyway, and they're like, about to take about 7 days to 10 days. I met some really smart people. There's some of the investors I met, especially there was a couple of guys at Wellington in the US and BlackRock and Fidelity and a guy up in Boston that I really, really enjoyed interacting with and really like exchanging ideas around the strategy and what was going well and what wasn't. So I really enjoyed the roadshows. I sort of tried to treat them as a bit of a sort of, get something back from the investors and say, what do you think? And try and get some out of them. So I never found that. So I quite enjoyed it.
And then after 11 years, you basically stepped down and you took some time out, and then you've moved into a venture capital role, correct?
Yeah, so I stepped down a year ago now. In a couple of weeks' time, it's a year, which has gone really fast. And then obviously our Series B investor, Greylock, morphed into 83 North in Europe about 4 years ago. So they offered me a part-time role as a general partner initially. So thought that sounds really interesting. So obviously I'm doing that now. But yeah, no, I took some time as well. Took about 4 or 5 months in the end off, which is nice. Yeah, it was just, after 11 years, it's just other things you want to do with your life. There was just nothing. Anyway, I just knew inside me when it was the right time. And in some ways, I think, could I have done another year or two? Maybe, maybe not. But actually, for me and the family, it was just the right time. And you just have to know that in yourself, and then be disciplined enough not to stay for too long.
Coming back to your own grandpa's advice that you can be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
And now you're a VC.
Yeah.
How does that play into your perspective? Do you think that's something you'll do for a long time, or do you have an itch you need to scratch to do something else?
No, I don't actually. I really enjoy spending time with entrepreneurs. I think the best thing about being a VC, in my opinion, obviously, is that you get to spend time with really brilliant, smart entrepreneurs. And that's, I guess lots of VCs say that, but I actually really, really mean it. I love that part of the job. I really, really enjoy. I probably do too many meetings as a result. I'm probably not disciplined enough in my time. I probably need to get better at that because I really enjoy meeting the entrepreneurs. But no, I really enjoy it actually. I think the challenge is, really in this moment in time is just making sure I think, don't bring your personal biases, and secondly, really try and identify the special entrepreneurs, because that's not easy actually. But hopefully I'll get okay at it.
So what industries are fascinating you at the moment? Using buzzword bingo, is it things like AI and blockchain, or?
No, less so actually. I kind of a bit more contrary, I guess. I quite like old-fashioned businesses, so I quite like the SaaS business model stuff, which I guess is quite conservative these days. I also like, but I see some good stuff, especially coming out of Germany still and Scandinavia, and with that business model. Actually, if there's a bit of buzzword in me, I guess there would be robotics. I guess from being a child of the 80s. But no, I really think robotics is interesting at an industrial application level, because I do think about many tasks, including delivery, for example, which human beings really are not a very efficient use of human resource, and not very good for the environment either. So I think there's if there was one buzzword bingo about industries, I think robotics would be one I'm genuinely interested in, and I've spent a lot of time looking at various companies in that sector. And then probably the third one is obviously e-commerce marketplaces, given my background.
Yeah, that's very fair.
We interrupt this episode to invite you to enjoy a moment of calm. I'm Tamara Levitt, the writer and narrator of the meditations in the Calm app. Amidst the chaos and busyness of life, it's so important to pause. The calm and clarity we gain through meditation is an essential part of what makes a great leader. So take a moment now to close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath. Inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly. Feel your lungs expanding and contracting. And as you take this next breath, feel your whole body relax. And then, when you're ready, open your eyes. To learn more about the Calm app, visit calm.com/secretleaders for a 1-month trial. And now, back to today's guest.
This final part is more around the balance that's required in a successful career of a person of your esteemed stature. So it's very generously sponsored by Calm.com, the meditation app and Apple's 2017 App of the Year. So I guess the first question is, do you meditate, and have you ever been tempted to? Is that any part of your routine or journey?
Yeah, so I have actually. I have, and I think I guess meditation takes many forms, but I like to take my dogs for a nice big walk on the weekend. So my form of meditation is probably once or twice a week. I take the dogs for about an hour up the riverbank, and that's sort of a bit of quiet time, thinking time, and I definitely. In my mind, it qualifies as meditation because I feel like I'm meditating, so it must be true. I'm not sure I'm doing it very well, but I'm definitely I'm in a world of my own a little bit.
I have this conversation with pet owners all the time. I think pets are completely meditative. I think it counts.
Another podcast, I guess, Pete Smith was exactly the same. He meditated by taking his dog for a walk.
Yeah, well, okay, so, there you go then. So
yeah,
not an outlier.
I don't think people need to think about meditation as just sitting down
I think
on a yoga mat.
Yeah, I think of meditation as like stroking my cats because they purr and I don't think about anything for like 10 or 20 minutes. And I'm like, that's meditation, surely.
Absolutely.
Have you actually struggled during your journey with anything like depression, mental health issues? I mean, it's a really intense journey you've gone through, and they do say it's lonely at the top.
I suffered with stress a bit. I definitely no to no, absolutely not to those things, and so no, I didn't actually to those things. If there was one thing I did, I definitely felt the pressure and stress of having to deliver. First for us as a team to survive and bootstrap. Then as to the VCs, I definitely felt I owed it. They give us all this money. I thought, my God, we better pay them back. So I definitely felt that pressure. That there was times actually that I wore that burden a bit heavy. But no, not really. I always sort of think, well, I always had a bit of a life of Brian approach to things. You sort of start with nothing, you end with nothing. What have you lost? Nothing. So in that sense, I kind of think from a personal level, I never, I know I can live with very little financial means and be very happy. Actually, probably the happy times of my life were when financially I was probably really, really constrained, and actually they were brilliant times. So I don't worry about stuff like that because I know I can always survive because I have.
And what kind of support have you had along the way? So have you had mentors? Have you had really great advisors? Has there been that kind of structure in place? Maybe it's just, you mentioned your grandpa, but beyond that kind of multiplier within your own family, have people been there on the journey for you that really stand out? Doesn't seem like it from your facial expressions.
I wouldn't. Look, I don't want to underplay the credit a family have taken because, they've always been actively interested, and obviously various have really encouraged me. But I would say more for me, it was the friendships internally at Just Eat that got us through it. Like the pals I was building Just Eat with. So like guys like Matt Brady, our CMO, Mike Rowe, our CFO.
We know Matt. We're friends with him, actually.
Yeah, so if you know Brady, he's a brilliant guy to build a company with. So Matt Brady, Mike Rowe, Carlos McGowan, name check them. We were like we definitely felt like a group of buddies in a basement building a company in Jesper, obviously. We definitely felt like that. And I think they were probably the ones that we got each other through because we could see when each other's low. And I think good entrepreneurs help each other like that. You see, actually, Jesper's looked a bit down because he was always a bit up there and then down there. He was like one of those guys. So you could see, time to lift Jesper up. Someone go and have a word with him. But no, so not really. It was Mike probably I went to the most, our CFO. I would go to Mike and have a moan, and so Mike, I'm really fed up, So yeah, I think that was more the internal friendships that got me through it.
What's the biggest mistake you think you've ever made at Just Eat in your journey? Your personal single biggest mistake, and what did you do to rectify it?
Oh God, so many.
Well, take us through the list, maybe.
Yeah, we'd be here a while. I think probably the biggest mistake I made was 2 acquisitions I could have done and should have done. And I'm happy to say. So we should have bought Hungry House much earlier in the UK. I think that was my personal, I guess, drive to win, inverted commas, and beat our competitors clouded my judgment around being strategically thinking about M&A. So maybe we should have used that Series C money that we raised from Vitruvian, and we should have acquired them because we could have acquired them much cheaper probably, and we could have accelerated. Anyway, so didn't do that. That was my fault. I'm an idiot. I guess clouded my judgment there on that one. And then I think probably the second one was also a piece of M&A. We probably should have bought one of our European competitors back in, was it just before IPO. Actually, I won't take all the blame for that one because the guy on the other side of the table had a bloody big ego, and that made it difficult.
What was the name of that company?
I won't mention that company.
Oh, you can't. Okay.
But there's not that many European companies. But he had a big ego, and it just got in the way, and I probably didn't push it hard enough that I could have done at the time.
What's been the toughest thing you've had to do in your professional life?
Toughest thing. I think for me that's simple. I think the hardest thing I ever did at Just Eat was letting people go, because they were friends and colleagues for a period of time, and then you could just see there was once or twice. It wasn't that often actually, probably 4 or 5 times over the course of 11 years. I had to do it, so once every other year almost. That someone who I'd been working with, helped build a company, you could just see they just were no longer the right person to stay on the journey. And having that conversation with someone that I genuinely did care about was really hard. I found those conversations the hardest conversations actually, but I knew that I would do them because I knew they're the right thing to do, and you sort of have that conviction because it's the right thing to do. But it didn't make them easy, so that was the hardest thing.
Let's flip it a little bit. So, what's the proudest moment of your journey?
Okay, so the proudest moment of the journey for sure for me is when I look around how many people and entrepreneurs Just Eat's created now. If I look around the London scene, I meet many of the guys come and present to me now. Actually, we definitely, I think, helped a little bit to drive some of the ecosystem, certainly in the food sector. And we started a food accelerator about 2 years ago at Just Eat, which drive other food entrepreneurs into starting up food tech companies. So I'm definitely proud of that because there was none of that when we were around when we started, and I think it would have been helpful if it had been around. I think probably the second thing I'm probably most proud of is the fact that our culture, I think there was something a little bit special about it. There really was. And I think those that were in the company would know what I'm talking about. And to me, they're the ones that matter.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Probably the best piece of advice I was given actually by our old chairman, John Hughes, who really did give us, I think, the maturity and confidence to not only just go public, but when we went public, to not be defined by our US competitor, who was also a public company. They IPO'd one day after us, and we did that deliberately.
Yeah,
obviously,
of course,
because their CEO really wanted
irreverence.
Their CEO was really mad on IPO and be the first company in the sector, and we just didn't care. We thought, well, I'll just do it whenever we want to do it. But the more we found out that their CEO wanted to be the first one, we thought, screw it, let's do it one day before him. So we did. Childish but amusing. That was one of Matt Brady's, I think.
Good.
So that was quite funny. So so that was probably him giving us that belief, I think, not only just to take it public, but then say you can be the global winner in the space, I think was a really important, ambition confirmer.
Hey guys, this is Luke here, co-founder of Contour Space. Sorry to interrupt this awesome podcast, but I just wanted to tell you a bit more about us. We're a startup ourselves, helping awesome companies find amazing office spaces from start to finish, whether you're looking for a couple of desks to your next big HQ. We take care of the whole process from start to finish, and our service is completely free. Check us out on contour.space.
What would you say to your 15-year-old self? So the guy driving around on a bicycle delivering newspaper rounds.
Yeah, I would say, don't worry, it's going to be all right, because I think at the time in my teens, I thought, oh my God, am I ever going to get out of Wales? Will I ever be able to get a decent job? I was more worried about that, really. So I would probably just be reassuring and say, it's going to be all right, and your gut feeling that you can probably start a business is true, because I wanted to start my own business. I remember going to a careers teacher in school saying I want to start my own business, and the careers teacher said to me, it's unbelievable. The careers teacher actually said to me, but you've gone, you don't have the means to start a company. Why do something more realistic, like be a fireman?
Nice.
So nothing wrong with being a fireman, by the way. No. Firemen are very important people, and maybe I'd have been a good fireman. I don't know, but that's not really the point, is it? Someone actually said that to me. Well, you haven't got the means, so how are you going to do it? Anyway, if I look back on that now and think about, God, I hope those careers teachers have changed. Because, it's nothing worse than being given bad advice when you're young and impressionable, right? It's different now. If someone said that to me, I'd say, don't be such a moron.
Very moral.
When you're 15, right? You're a bit more has an impact, right?
So we're coming on to the last question now. You'll be delighted to hear. So wrapping up now, David.
Sure.
What's the most exciting innovation in the world to you right now? So not necessarily something that you can specifically do at 83 North, but, if you could invest in anything in the world, what do you think is the most future exciting?
I would have to say something around health, actually. So I think the stuff around cancer research that's going on right now, I think is, I've had family members who've been impacted by that. So I would say stuff around health and some of the stuff that the Bill Gates Foundation is doing, I think is just inspirational. I think, that stuff really does matter because it's people. So that's probably the stuff I take the most inspiration from. And what it shows is what's possible when human beings really channel their energy and some smart people turn their minds to fixing some real problems that actually really matter. So that's probably the biggest thing I take inspiration from.
The last guest we interviewed was actually the founder of Babylon Health, and the stuff that they're doing is just absolutely amazing. A really ambitious guy.
Fantastic.
And finally, what does the future of takeaway look like?
Yeah, I think probably these two things. Firstly, it's going to continue to be more diverse. So takeaway, I think, is starting to no longer mean Chinese kebab and pizzas, right, and curries. It's going to mean pretty much everything you eat for dinner, whether it be, whatever it be, a salad or a sushi, whatever it be. It's going to just be, I think takeaway is going to become, maybe the word almost has to change because of the connotation back to being just fast food, because actually people are just taking away food now and having it for their dinners. We had the first, when I was at Just Eat as CEO, the first restaurants in Canada, in Toronto, flats being built without kitchens. So people just ate out every night of the week or ordered in. So I think it's going to continue to become a product that everyone uses day to day to live. I think probably the second thing is that you'll see more technology come into it to make the delivery of all different types of food possible. And that is where, for example, robotics potentially comes in. Because I don't see a world in 10 years' time where human beings can be running around on 0 hours contracts delivering food. It just doesn't necessarily feel the right way to be doing it when technology, I think, could make it much smarter. I mean, maybe there's some complication around that, but I think that's for certainly at least a good percentage of food delivery orders will happen through robotics.
With technology so much at the heart of Just Eat's story, do you think that physical product side could be something that you look at in the future as a company?
I don't think so. I just don't think so. I think our job was to support the guys who are making the food and to do more for them, to help them do it smarter, better, less waste, more efficiently, use technology to run their kitchens better. But I think that's where we should stop and start. But I mean, there's a new CEO now. He might think, I'm a moron and they should, be making kebabs. Who knows?
Well, moron or not, you've built an awesome company. So thank you very much for your time today.
Next week on Secret Leaders.
There is a plan in place that will make the world better, significantly better for everybody on it. So I would encourage everybody around the world to look up that plan, look up globalgoals.org, spend some time with the goals, have a real think about what it is you could do to make a difference. Never believe you can't make a difference, because everybody can make some sort of positive impact on the people in the world around them, and love each other just a little bit more.
That was Gail Galley, co-founder of Project Everyone, whose mission is to promote the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. She co-founded the company with Kate Garvey, whose husband is Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales, and Richard Curtis, the infamous British movie writer and director and founder of Red Nose Day. The three of them make up the brains, beauty and brawn behind one of the toughest missions around to drive awareness and adoption of some of the biggest challenges facing our planet today. If you're interested in sustainable development, climate change, poverty, and any of these major global topics, next week's founder will be sure to surprise, entertain, delight, and definitely inspire. See you then.
Don't miss an episode by subscribing to us on iTunes or Spotify. Just search for Secret Leaders. You can also check out our website at secretleaders.com for show notes and behind the scenes of each interview.
Hi, I'm Simon LaFosse, the founder of LaFosse Associates. We're a young, high-growth and co-owned business, and we're experts in attracting talent. If you want to build a great team, or you just want advice, please get in touch. We run free seminars, and we'd love to see you there. Thanks for your time.
This episode was hosted by Dan Murray, produced by me, Rich Martell, edited by Harry Morton at Lower Street Media, and if you're hearing this, that's probably thanks to Jennifer Osman, our marketing whiz from Canada.